Hey everybody, it's Dr. Leith, and we've covered a lot so far, so this week we're just kind of focused on tying it all together. You'll see that I put on this week a link to a couple clinicians from KCREP to talk about validity, reliability, the importance of assessment, not just in terms of counselor knowledge, but also in terms of counseling practice. And I think they do a really nice job of kind of tying it together, keeping us grounded in that clinical work. And I've also included two articles, and these are two of my favorite instruments, the Conformity to Masculine Norms Inventory and the Conformity to Feminine Norms Inventory. And they both do a really fantastic job of illustrating how assessments are made, and it should really highlight to you the importance of understanding where certain assessments were normed and on what group of people they were normed. So these are a little bit on the lengthier side, but they're really easy to read and they're really interesting, and they do a good job at illustrating how assessments get made. And so what I want to do now is just kind of show you how we go about selecting instruments. So I'm going to show you two really cool databases that you can use. And this is all stuff that would apply to your treatment plan that you turn in at the end of the semester. So definitely make a mental note of what we're going over in the next couple minutes. So through UTSA's library, wrong way. Through our libraries, you can go to databases, and a very important one to know about is the Mental Measurement Yearbook. Mental Measurement Yearbook, here we go. So, what this one does is it contains information and reviews, critical reviews. So not just information from the publisher or the person who made the test, but somebody else not affiliated reviewed it, which is what you want. And that these are commercially available standardized tests, right? So this is good information. So if you open a private practice, you decide you want to allow testing and assessment to be one of your things, this is a resource that you'll probably take advantage of quite a bit as you try and figure out what are the most current, IQ tests, personality tests, addictions assessment, whatever it might be. If you're working at an agency or if you're working in a school and that school says, we need to kind of do a community assessment, or we want to implement something or try and find information, you could also use instruments found here. And so what I like to do is type in generally what you're looking for. So I put in personality, we'll probably catch a lot of fish. That's a pretty wide net. And then you've got, all your different ways of kind of reducing those results. And we see what's here. So you pick one, like the Milan Clinical Multi-Axial Inventory 4, very big, very commonly used personality assessment. And it gives us this information. When was it published? Good to know, right? What if you were looking at something for diagnosis and it said it was created in 2000, 2005, even 2010? Those were all dates before DSM-5 were there. Who the publisher is? Oh, hello, San Antonio. The purpose, and this is information that comes from the publisher. It's a personality test. This tells you what population, 18 and older. So you'd be violating the norms and the standardization if you gave it to someone who was maybe 15. And even though, yes, teenagers have a personality and things like that, this particular instrument was not designed to measure that. Scores, it tells us what they're measuring. So there's 30 different things that this test looks at. All these different personality types, right? And some of these sound familiar: schizoid, avoidant. But then we have turbulent, sadistic, masochistic, right? Clinical syndromes: generalized anxiety, somatic, bipolar, depression, alcohol, all these different things. So these are scores that this instrument would give you. It tells you can do it in a group setting or an individual setting. It takes about 30 minutes. And then pricing, right? No such thing as a free lunch. So this gives you that information. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but for example, in private practice, somebody has to pay for that test. Insurance most likely won't pay for this, right? They're not going to reimburse you or your client for the actual test. They will pay for your time to administer and score it and all of that good stuff. But at some point, this has to be purchased, right? And so there's that information. That's a discussion for a different day. If you go into private practice and you do something like that, let me know and we can talk about that if you have those questions. Special comments designed to align with DSM-5. Wonderful. It's designed to be administered digitally or through paper and pencil. It's computer scored, right? Because decades ago, it would have been the case that you had to hand score it. So this saves you time and reduces what? Error, right? Because you don't have to worry about carrying the 1 or moving a decimal. Who reviewed it? Special editions, right? What if you're serving Spanish-speaking clients? And then just this is the published test description. So if you went to Pearson's website, this is what they are telling you about it. Now onto the really good stuff. This is going to look overwhelming because it's just a huge old block of text, but you can listen to it if you like. But this is someone who reviewed it. So who reviewed this? Stephen Rouse from Pepperdine University, right? So somebody who's not with Pearson reviewed this to give a more objective and accurate depiction of what it is, right? So we have the description, and this is this person's interpretation. And look, here we have, right here, despite clear connections between many of these scales and formal DSM-5 disorders, these scores are not intended to provide diagnoses, right? So, and it is designed to be applied to clinical assessment in areas such as forensic psychology and clinical treatment, right? So that's his interpretation, another professional who is knowledgeable about mental health, counseling, psychology, and assessment, explaining what this is really about. He goes on to talk about development. And again, I said at the very beginning, looking at those 2 articles I posted, looking at the standardization process and who was this test normed on, right? Would those personality types be in different cultures, right? Or would they be different? So this is his interpretation of the information they gave him. So for example, he says here the Spanish language translation was created using many best practices. That's good to know, instead of someone who said they just kind of copied and pasted their information into Google Translate and then printed it out and there's your Spanish language version, right? Now the technical stuff. This is what really gets into the stuff that we covered, the validity and the reliability. This is also the information that you need for your treatment plan paper when you're telling me that I'm going to use this personality assessment. I need you to tell me the reliability and validity. And that might sound overwhelming right now, but if you look at the examples and if you look at this review here, you see it's really not that scary, right? So he tells us that ages ranged from 18 to 85, with most people between 26 and 49. And then we get into, what's this? Internal consistency. What does that measure? That's right, reliability, right? So on all the scales, let me highlight. We'll just look at this sentence right here. For the personality scales, alpha coefficients, right? That's the internal reliability coefficient alpha, ranged from 0.67 to 0.92. That 0.92, very impressive. This 0.67 is below that threshold. Now that doesn't mean automatically disregard it. It means it warrants, making a note of it mentally and then documenting it. But what do we know between that 0.92 and 0.67? As reliability goes up, error goes down. So that 0.92 has less error than this, right? Then he goes on to say the only personality scales with alpha coefficients below 0.8 were compulsive, right? And that's the one that's really kind of below, narcissistic, and antisocial. And it's interesting that it's these three that are down, compulsive. So what might be an error? So this is kind of an aside, right? How we would tie it in with the nature of the assessment, personality. If someone's compulsive and you give them this very long test, what is likely to happen? Right? They're going to start compulsively answering, right? Whether it's out of boredom and fatigue, so like, let's just get this done, or if they're reading the questions and the questions are things like, I like to party, and that I really like to party, when most of the time they don't, but in that moment, that's what they thought. I like to eat healthy. I like diet and exercise. Well, today I do, right? That compulsivity is like, yes, of course. Narcissism and antisocial, I don't care about this, I just want to go home. Narcissism, there might be a little bit of answering, either faking good, meaning, ooh, some of these questions are going to make me look bad, so let me make sure I don't look bad. Or faking bad, right? Maybe it is somebody who wants that negative attention, and so they answer differently. And so our reliability is going down. They go on to say the other scores for the different tests, right? And so that's good information. That tells us, it's good for two reasons. One, academically, for your assignment, it's giving you the information you need for your assignment. But clinically, remember, Pearson is trying to get you to purchase this. They are trying to get you to say, hey, if you do personality testing, use this assessment. So nobody sells something saying, you know what, we had a few hiccups here and there. So having this external review and having the mental measurement yearbook as a database for you to find these things, to understand the things that might not come immediately, is really good for you as a clinician to understand. And then his commentary on it, right? Here's his references for where he, kind of made his conclusions. And then we have a second review, right? From instructor in Alabama. He does the same thing. Description, development, technical information. You'll notice that this one didn't have a ton of information on validity, right? And that's kind of been my experience with this. You might get a sentence or two with respect to validity. The test manual reports, right? So he's kind of book reporting it, and that's okay. That's not a negative or a positive, it just is. But you get that reliability. Sometimes you can get the validity, and they really go into great detail. They didn't on this one. Well, they'll say, the schizoid personality aspect of this test rendered similar results of the schizoid personality scale on this other test. Nice convergent validity. So you get that information. The takeaway right now is twofold. One, as a clinician, if you decide to do this, either for your agency, for your private practice, for whatever it is, this is a great resource to go in, find your different options, see if it's feasible, see if it works with your population, and then get that information, right? Because ethically, if this thing was really bad and you still chose to use it, you've got quite a bit of explaining you'd have to do without it seeming like you're just kind of unethically selecting instruments and giving them to your clients. For class, it's good because it gives you the information. This is what you would use to answer the question, right? What are the different assessments that you'll use on your assignment? So now I'm going to switch over. Actually, that was my prep work. Now I'm going to another one. This one is called psych tests. Actually, I'm just going to close out and start us fresh here, just in case it timed me out. So psych test is another database. Now this one is not for commercial use. For mental measurement yearbook, for this one, these are commercially available. And the way that you get included in the yearbook is every 2 years, Mental Measurement Yearbook will send out an invitation. If you've got an assessment that you would like to include in our database, in our catalog, send it our way. And if I, for example, made a personality assessment and I want people to use it, I supply all this information and a version of the test, send it to Mental Measurement Yearbook, they send it to their reviewer, and then I get included in here. And I've seen assessments on here that were not very good. So, that's the impetus for a publisher to include quality assessments, keep their stuff up to date. And so if my thing gets in there, right, if my assessment gets into the yearbook, 2 years pass, and they're going to say, hey, do you want to keep it in there? And then they'll do the review. Again, if I opt out, because maybe DSM-6 has arrived and I have not yet updated my personality assessment, then they're going to remove this, right? So once in, there's a maintenance aspect that the publisher is keeping up to date with their, times are changing, right? Like you have kept up with whatever you need to change or address. On the other hand, we have psych tests, and this is more research-based. This is non-commercial, right? So here, and this is where you find stuff like from the academic journals and things like the Journal of Counseling and Development, the Counseling Psychologist, the different social work, psychology, and counseling journals. And so if we search here, we get a bunch of different things that are in various states of creation, right? So, for example, let's find a good one here. Oh, I'm going for this one. So, Comprehensive Assessment of Psychopathic Personality Self-Report. So again, this was not necessarily created for commercial use. It's probably slanted more towards using for research. But you can look at this to get an idea, I think, as a clinician. You can look at this and get ideas of, okay, so these are some of the traits and some of the questions that they use in research. How can I translate that into clinical work? So here, there's a description, who came up with it. You can email the author. What type of instrument is it? How is it scored, 4-point scale? Methods, right? How did they get everything? And then you'll see here, right, we have our reliability. So we have some that did not do well, some that did okay, and then some more that did not do well, right? So, but you have your reliability information. Validity, how did they come up with that? Factor analysis is another really important thing that's a little bit beyond the scope of what we go over in this class, but it's good if it's included. It's not a deal breaker if it isn't. And then just more information. So, let's see what this thing is all about. For your assignment, I will allow you to use instruments you find here. You still need to include all the relevant information, though, the reliability and the validity, but this might make for a more interesting assignment. So here we have the source. This was the article that it came from, the test format, the instrument type. You'll see the permission. Can be reproduced, meaning, let's say that I wanted to do a study with this. I can use it, but I can't charge for non-commercial research and educational purposes without seeking written permission. So let's see what we have here. So you can see psych tests, what they do, and this saves a lot of time because they find the article, they source it, and then they kind of extract the assessment. So detached, they have a detachment scale, uncommitted, unempathetic, right? So on a scale of 1 to 4, how much do you agree with this, right? I can easily relate to other people's findings, strongly agree to strongly disagree. So for psychopathic, right, aka antisocial, we would imagine this to be low, right? I am often described as a kind person. I don't know how that would go, because sometimes somebody with antisocial can come across as very charming and superficial, and it might be manipulative, but they might be answering as though, yes, I am actually described as kind until I'm not. Unreliable. So we have all these different things, right? So great questions. And so you could see, as I was saying before, you might say, hey, I've got a client, they kind of maybe have these antisocial tendencies. I'm not quite sure what questions to ask, right? I have the DSM, and I'm just kind of looking at the symptoms, but man, I really wish I had some more information. Well, we can also kind of look at these and see. This is so not designed to make a diagnosis, but rather kind of enlighten you to ask different questions. Let's try something else. Let's try binge eating. We can all relate, am I right? Binge eating symptoms measure. Hello. All the standard information, etc. Let's see. Oh no. What's this? Right? So I'm not getting. Now, again, there might be a reason for that, right? There could be a reason for that. Who knows? But it's worth noting that we don't know how reliable or how valid this thing is. So, for example, if it was, I like to eat food, right? Well, that's not a really valid binge eating question, is it? Right? We all like to eat food. Well, that would explain it. There's only 2 questions. Have you eaten so much in a short period of time that you would have been embarrassed if others had seen you do it? Yes. Have you been afraid to start eating because you thought you wouldn't be able to stop or control your eating? That's a really good binge eating question. So we've looked at this. This doesn't quite help me, right? If I'm doing clinical work, and those of you that had me before know that I really like working with the eating disorders and helping people through that. This for me, clinically, isn't very helpful. Research-wise, also not very helpful because it's only 2 questions. So we go back. So that's an example of a time where we might look at something and not really like it. Now let's check out this one for children. Now look at this. This is good, right? Is a brief, simple, structured interviewer-administered scale. Okay, 7 questions. What to do if kids have a hard time answering. No reliability indicated. Okay. There was this validity. There was significant association between this one and the structured clinical interview for the DSM-4. Childhood, birth to 12 years, 2 to 5 years, 6 to 12 years, 13 to 17. Okay, so this is really for younger than 18. And let's see what we're working with here. I'm the only one on this campus. You'd think that the internet connection would be a little bit faster. Okay. 6 questions consist of a yes or no response, and 1 query is about onset of behavior. And here we go. Do you ever want to eat when you are not even hungry? Yes or no? So this seems good, right? Children's binge eating scale. So the idea is that the questions have been normed for children and things like that. Of course, if we wanted more information to see how they made it, we could always go back to, here's the reference, right? I could look it up. So this is another site where you can pull things, right? And so again, on one hand, we have this one, APA Psych Tests, is going to be more research focused. Still has that information, trauma symptom checklist. And then on this one, this is definitely more clinically driven for clinicians, right? For you to focus on doing clinical work. So trauma symptom checklist, and then trauma symptom inventory, right? So PAR made this one. We have our information. The validity scales, you can see that there's cost associated with this. Then on the other hand, we have this one. So here they have the reference for where they're getting information from, items. And you can see that that you're probably looking at this saying, how do I use it? And this is, again, you could use it for research or generate ideas for clinical work, right? Each symptom is rated according to frequency. So how often do you experience insomnia? How often do you experience stomach pain, restless sleep, anxiety attacks, so on and so forth. So for right now, where we're at in the semester, I suggest just kind of knowing these databases, get online, have a little bit of fun, type in the things that you're interested in. If you're interested in eating disorder, seeing what eating disorder assessments are out there on both databases. If you're interested in autism, looking at that. If you're interested in non-clinical issues like career satisfaction or relationship strength, right? Communication styles or teaching, ethnicity, gender stuff, right? All of those issues have a place on these different databases, and you can find out more about them. In fact, you might even find there's a lack of assessments for X, Y, and Z, right? There are assessments that are only for men, right? There are assessments only for women, or they're only for adults. There aren't any for kiddos, or these were all normed on only English-speaking young adults, right? So it's worth getting on there, playing around. At some point, you'll have to do your paper, and this is a good. These are good resources to help find the instruments that you need, where you can find information about the reliability and the validity of the instrument, and it helps supplement your explanation as to why you're using this, and specifically why are you using it with your client in real life, and why are you using it with on your assignment. So I hope this is helpful. Remember, reliability and validity have a relationship. It's not compensatory, so you can't trade one for the other. So you're looking for the best combination of the two. I hope this was helpful, or at least gives you an idea of where to go to for different tests. If you have any questions or concerns or thoughts, as always, just send me an email. Let me know what I can do for you. I hope all of you are doing well, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.